The night Dante Varelli signed away his marriage, he thought he was saving her life. He was wrong. What he didn't know was that Alara walked out of that penthouse carrying more than heartbreak. She carried his child. A secret that would turn a clean break into an obsession. A divorce that would ignite a war. This is a story about a man who ruled an empire but couldn't protect what mattered most. About a woman who chose survival over love. And about the daughter who became the target they never saw coming. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down like bullets on the night Dante Varelli made the worst decision of his life. He sat in the leather chair behind his desk, the kind of chair that cost more than most people earned in a year, and stared at the papers in front of him. Dissolution of marriage, clean, legal, final. His attorney had laid them out that morning with the efficiency of a man who'd done this 1,000 times before. Sign here, Mr. Varelli, and here. Initial at the bottom. Dante had picked up the pen, put it down, picked it up again. Marco, his second in command, stood by the window, pretending to look at the city lights but really watching his boss fall apart in slow motion. You don't have to do this, Marco said quietly. Yeah, I do. She loves you. That's exactly why I have to. Dante signed his name. The ink looked black as blood under the desk lamp. 3 floors down, in the bedroom they'd shared for 2 years, Alara Quinn, soon to be just Alara Quinn again, no Varelli attached, was packing the last of her things into a suitcase that barely held half her life. She moved mechanically, folded a sweater, placed it in the bag, picked up a book, put it down. Her hands were shaking. She'd known this was coming, had felt it coming for months, really, ever since the night Dante came home with blood on his shirt that wasn't his. Ever since she'd seen the look in his eyes when he'd found the threatening note tucked under their door. We know where she sleeps. He'd barely touched her since then. She pressed a hand to her stomach, still flat, still hers alone. 6 weeks. That's how long she'd known. And she hadn't told him. Couldn't tell him. Because if she did, he'd never let her go. And if he never let her go, the men who wanted him dead would eventually get to her, to them. The door opened. She didn't turn around. It's done, Dante said. His voice was empty. That's what scared her most. Not the anger she could have fought against. Not even the cold calculation she'd learned to navigate. But this hollow space where his heart used to be. Okay. The money's already in your account. The apartment in your name. You'll be safe. Okay. Alara, don't. She zipped the suitcase. The sound was too loud in the quiet. Don't make this harder. I'm trying to protect you. Now she turned. Looked at him. Really looked. He was still the most beautiful man she'd ever seen. Dark eyes, sharp jaw. The kind of face that made people underestimate how dangerous he was. But there were new lines around his mouth. Gray at his temples that hadn't been there when they'd met. You're trying to make yourself feel better about sending me away, she said. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt, maybe. But it was gone before she could be sure. You think I want this? I think you've already decided. So it doesn't matter what I think. She grabbed her suitcase, walked past him. He caught her wrist. Not hard. Never hard. Even now. And she stopped. I love you, he said. That's why I'm doing this. She almost told him then. Almost said, I'm pregnant. We made a person. You're going to be a father. But she looked into his eyes and saw the finality there and knew it wouldn't change anything. He'd made up his mind. He'd decided she was safer without him. He was wrong, but he'd decided. I know, she whispered. Then she pulled free and walked out the door. Dante stood in the empty bedroom for a long time after she left. The rain kept falling. Somewhere in the building, a pipe was dripping. Marco appeared in the doorway eventually. Boss? Get out. We have the meeting with... I said, get out. Marco left. Dante picked up the pillow from Alara's side of the bed. It still smelled like her shampoo. Vanilla and something else. Something he'd never be able to name. He threw it across the room. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and put his face in his hands and tried not to think about how the apartment already felt like a tomb. Oh, Alara made it exactly 4 blocks before she had to pull over and throw up. She knelt on the wet pavement next to her car, one hand braced against the door, and emptied her stomach into the gutter. The rain soaked through her coat. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. When there was nothing left, she sat back on her heels and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Okay, she said out loud. To herself, to the baby, to nobody. Okay, we're okay. She wasn't sure she believed it. She got back in the car, started the engine. Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister, Maya. How'd it go? Alara didn't answer. She put the car in drive and headed north toward the apartment Dante had bought her. The safe one. The one with the security system and the doorman and the locks that were supposed to keep the monsters out. She made it 3 days there. 3 days of staring at walls that weren't hers, eating food that tasted like cardboard, sleeping in a bed that was too big and too empty. On the 4th day, she called Maya. I need to leave, Alara said when her sister picked up. Leave where? The city, the state. I don't know, somewhere he can't find me. Elle, he gave you the divorce. He's not going to... I'm pregnant. Silence. Long enough that Alara pulled the phone away from her ear to check if the call had dropped. Maya? How far along? 6 weeks. Maybe 7. Does he know? No. Are you going to tell him? No. More silence. Then, okay, come to me. I'll help you figure it out. Maya lived in a small town in Oregon that Alara had visited exactly once for a weekend and barely remembered. It had trees, a lake, the kind of place where people didn't lock their doors and everyone knew everyone else's business. It sounded perfect. Alara packed her suitcase again, smaller this time, only what she needed, and left the apartment at 2 a.m. She disabled the security system, left her phone on the kitchen counter, took only cash. She'd watched enough crime shows to know the basics. If Dante wanted to find her, he'd have to work for it. What she didn't know, couldn't have known, was that Dante already had a man watching her building, a quiet guy named Luca, who was very good at being invisible. When Alara's car pulled out of the underground garage at 2:17 a.m., Luca made a note of it. When she got on the highway heading north, he followed at a distance. When she stopped for gas just outside the city limits, he took a photo. He called Dante at 6 a.m. She's running. Dante was in the gym, beating the hell out of a punching bag. He stopped mid-swing. What? Left the apartment around 2, heading north on the interstate. No phone, paid cash for gas. She's covering her tracks. Dante felt something cold settle in his chest. Where is she now? Lost her about an hour ago. She must have spotted the tail. Or she knows how to disappear. Dante pulled off his gloves. His knuckles were bleeding. Let her go. Boss? You heard me? Let her go. If she's running scared, it means someone got to her. We should... I said let her go. He hung up, stared at the phone. Then he hurled it across the gym. It hit the wall and shattered into pieces. Marco appeared from the hallway. He looked at the broken phone, at Dante's bleeding hands, at the punching bag swinging from its chain. What happened? She left. The apartment? Everything. Marco was quiet for a moment. Then, you want me to find her? No? Dante, she's safer if I don't know where she is. Dante grabbed a towel, wiped the blood off his knuckles. That's the whole point, isn't it? That's why I signed the fucking papers. You think she'll come back? No? Then why? Because I love her. Dante threw the towel down. So we're going to let her disappear, and we're going to make sure nobody else finds her either. How? Spread the word. Alara Quinn is off limits. Anyone who goes near her answers to me. I don't care if it's family, rivals, cops. She doesn't exist anymore. Understood? Marco nodded slowly. Understood. Dante walked out of the gym, took the elevator up to the penthouse. The bedroom still smelled like her. He stood in the doorway and stared at the empty space where her things used to be and felt something inside him go quiet and dark. He'd done the right thing. He'd set her free. So why did it feel like he'd just buried himself alive? Alara made it to Maya's house on fumes and stubbornness. She pulled into the gravel driveway at 11 at night, killed the engine, and sat there for a minute. The house was small. White siding, blue shutters, a porch with a swing. Lights on in the windows. It looked like something out of a catalog for normal lives. She'd never felt less normal in her life. The front door opened. Maya came out onto the porch, arms crossed against the cold. She was 5 years older than Alara, shorter, rounder, with the same dark hair but none of the chaos. She looked at Alara's car, at Alara. "You look like hell," Maya said. "Thanks. Come inside." Alara grabbed her suitcase and followed her sister into the house. It smelled like cinnamon and coffee. There were books on every surface, a cat asleep on the couch. Maya worked from home doing something with graphic design. She'd never married, never wanted to. She'd always said relationships were too complicated. Alara was starting to think she'd had the right idea. "You hungry?" Maya asked. "Not really." "When's the last time you ate?" Alara couldn't remember. "This morning?" Maya pointed at a chair. "Sit." Alara sat. Maya moved around the kitchen, pulling out bread, cheese, leftovers from dinner. She made a sandwich, put it in front of Alara, poured a glass of milk. "Eat." Alara picked at the sandwich. Her stomach was still unsettled, but she managed a few bites. Maya sat across from her, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "You want to talk about it?" "Not yet." "Okay." They sat in silence. The cat wandered in, looked at Alara with judgment, and left. "I set up the spare room," Maya said eventually. "You can stay as long as you need. I'll find my own place." I'm not going to crash on your couch for 9 months." 7 months, Maya corrected. "You're 6 weeks, remember?" Alara almost smiled. Almost. 7 months. "We'll figure it out. There's a clinic in town. A good doctor. We'll get you checked out. Make sure everything's okay." "Maya, and we need to talk about Dante." Alara set down the sandwich. "What about him? Are you sure he doesn't know?" "I'm sure." "And you're sure you don't want to tell him?" "I'm sure." Maya studied her. "He has a right to know, Elle. He has a right to be safe. So do I. So does—" She touched her stomach. "So does this baby. And none of us are safe if we're anywhere near him. You don't think he'd protect you? I think he'd try. And I think he'd die trying. And then where would we be?" Maya didn't argue. She just sipped her tea. After a while, she said, "You loved him." "I still do." "That's going to make this harder." "Yeah." Alara pushed the plate away. "Yeah, it is, that's all." 3 months later, Dante stood in his office, staring at a photograph he shouldn't have. He'd promised himself he wouldn't look for her. Had told Marco to shut down the surveillance. Had meant it when he'd said she was safer if he didn't know where she was. But old habits died hard, and loyalty was a currency Dante understood. Luca, the same guy who'd followed Alara out of the city, had a cousin who owed him a favor. The cousin worked for a private investigation firm. The cousin had gone looking, not because Dante asked, just because Luca was curious. And now Dante had a photograph on his desk. Alara, standing outside a small white house, pregnant. Very, very pregnant. "When was this taken?" Dante's voice was flat. Luca shifted his weight. "Last week." "Where?" "Oregon. Little town called Crescent Bay. She's living with her sister." Dante picked up the photo. Alara's hair was longer. She looked tired. Her hand was resting on her stomach, protective, unconscious. The kind of gesture a mother made. "How far along?" "Based on the size? 5 months, maybe 6. Dante did the math. 6 months. She would have been pregnant when she left. When she walked out of his apartment, when she drove away in the middle of the night. She'd known. She'd known, and she hadn't told him. He set the photo down very carefully. "Get out." "Boss?" "I said get out." Luca left. Marco came in a few minutes later. He looked at the photo on the desk, at Dante's face. "Fuck," Marco said quietly. "Yeah." "You didn't know?" "No." "You going after her?" "No." "Dante, she left because she thought she was protecting the baby. If I show up, I prove her right, that I'm the danger." Dante picked up the photo again, stared at it. "She made her choice. And you're just going to let her raise your kid alone? I'm going to make sure she's safe, that they're both safe. That's all I can do." Marco shook his head. "That's bullshit, and you know it. Maybe, but it's the only move I've got." What Dante didn't say, what he couldn't say, was that the photograph had cracked something open inside him, something that had been locked down tight since the night he'd signed the papers. He'd thought he was protecting Alara by letting her go. But now there was a baby. His baby. And he had no idea how to protect something he wasn't allowed to touch. So he did what he always did when things got complicated. He threw money at the problem. Over the next few months, strange things started happening in Crescent Bay. The local clinic got a massive anonymous donation. Alara's landlord, she'd moved into her own place by then, suddenly decided to cut her rent in half. The grocery store she shopped at started having incredible sales on exactly the things she needed. Her car, which had been making a concerning noise, got fixed overnight while she was asleep. Maya noticed. She wasn't stupid. "Someone's watching you," Maya said one afternoon when Alara came home with bags of groceries she'd bought for half the price they should have been. "What?" "Don't play dumb. The rent, the donations, the car. Someone's taking care of you." Alara set down the bags. Her back hurt. Everything hurt. She was 7 months along and felt like a whale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "It's him, isn't it?" "Maya, it's Dante. He knows." Alara sank into a chair. She'd known this was coming. Had felt it, actually, the first time the clinic receptionist told her the ultrasound was free. Dante had a way of moving through the world that left fingerprints. You just had to know where to look. "I think so," she admitted. "Are you scared?" "I don't know." Alara touched her stomach. The baby kicked, strong, insistent. She'd started thinking of her as a fighter. "He hasn't come here, hasn't called. Maybe he's just making sure we're okay from a distance." "What you want?" Alara didn't answer, because the truth was complicated. Part of her wanted him to show up, wanted him to fight for them. But another part, the part that had walked out of his penthouse 3 months pregnant and terrified, knew that distance was the only thing keeping them alive. "It doesn't matter what I want," she said finally. "He made his choice. I made mine." But late at night, when the baby was kicking and she couldn't sleep, she'd pull out her phone. Look at the old photos she hadn't been able to delete. Dante laughing at something she'd said. Dante asleep with his arm around her. Dante looking at her like she was the only real thing in his world. She missed him so much it was a physical ache, and she hated herself for it. But the baby came on a Tuesday. Alara's water broke while she was reaching for a can of soup on the top shelf at the grocery store. 1 minute she was standing there, annoyed that someone had put the tomato soup so high. The next, she was standing in a puddle, staring down at her wet shoes. "Oh," she said. Then, "Oh no." Maya, who'd been looking at pasta 2 aisles over, came running when she heard Alara's voice. She took one look at the situation and grabbed her sister's arm. Okay, this is fine, we're fine." "I'm not ready," Alara said. "Nobody's ready. Come on." They made it to the hospital in 12 minutes. The nurses got Alara into a room, put her in a gown, hooked her up to monitors. The contractions started about an hour later. They felt like being ripped apart from the inside. "I can't do this," Alara gasped. "Yes, you can," Maya said. She was holding Alara's hand, had been for 3 hours. Her fingers were probably broken by now. "I want—" Alara stopped, breathed through another contraction. "I want him here." Maya's expression softened. "I know. I hate that I want him here." "I know that too." The doctor came in, checked her progress. Said something about dilation that Alara didn't process because another contraction was hitting and, oh God, this was worse than anything she'd imagined. "You're doing great," the doctor said. Alara wanted to throw something at her. 12 hours later, 12 hours of pain and fear and exhaustion, Alara heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Her daughter crying. They put the baby on her chest. She was tiny, red-faced, furious, perfect. "Hi," Alara whispered. "Hi, baby. I'm your mom." The baby stopped crying, looked at her, and Alara felt everything in her life shift and settle into place. "What are you going to name her?" Maya asked. She was crying, happy tears. Alara looked down at her daughter. She had Dante's eyes, dark, serious, way too knowing for someone 30 seconds old. "Arya," she said. "Her name is Arya." 2,000 miles away, Dante was in a meeting when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. The meeting was important. A negotiation with a family from Chicago that could either end with a handshake or a shootout, depending on how the next 10 minutes went. Marco was doing most of the talking. Dante was just there to look intimidating. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, looked at the screen. A text from a number he didn't recognize. It's a girl, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Mother and baby healthy. There was a photo attached. A tiny baby with dark hair and a scrunched-up face, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Dante stood up so fast he knocked his chair over. "Boss," Marco said. The men from Chicago looked startled, then wary. Dante was staring at his phone like it had just told him the world was ending. "I have to go," Dante said. "We're in the middle of—" "Marco, handle it." He walked out, got in his car, sat in the parking garage staring at the photo. A daughter. He had a daughter. He'd known it was coming, had known for months, but knowing and seeing were different things. The baby in the photo was real, alive, his, and he wasn't there. He called the number. It went to voicemail. He tried again, same thing. "God damn it," he whispered. His phone rang. He answered before the first ring finished. "Elara?" "It's not Elara," Luca's voice. "I sent the photo." "You're in Oregon." "Yeah, been here since she hit 7 months. You told me to keep her safe." "I didn't tell you to keep—" Dante stopped, rubbed his face. "How is she?" "Tired, happy. She doesn't know I'm here." "Good. Keep it that way." "Boss, I mean it. She can't know I'm watching." "You should be here." "I can't be." "Why the hell not?" Because the moment he showed up, every enemy he'd ever made would know exactly where to aim. Because Elara had left for a reason. Because he'd promised himself he'd keep them safe, even if it meant staying away. "Just keep sending photos," Dante said, "and make sure nobody else finds them." He hung up, looked at the photo again. Arya. He wondered if Elara had named her, wondered what she looked like when she smiled, wondered if she'd ever know he existed. His chest felt too tight. Marco found him 20 minutes later, still sitting in the car. "Meeting's done," Marco said. "Chicago's on board. You want to tell me what the hell that was about?" Dante showed him the photo. Marco went very still. "That's my daughter, yeah. Jesus, Dante. I know. You have to go see her." "I can't." "Bullshit. You get on a plane right now and what? Show up and put a target on their backs? Elara left because being with me was dangerous. That hasn't changed. So you're just going to watch from a distance? For how long?" "As long as it takes." "As long as what takes?" "Until I make my world safe enough that they can be in it." Marco stared at him. "You're going to burn it all down, aren't you?" Dante looked at the photo one more time. Then he put the phone away and started the car. Every last bit of it. Arya turned 6 months old on a Sunday morning that smelled like rain and fresh bread. Elara had gotten up early to bake, something she'd never done before the baby, but now it felt necessary. Normal. Like if she could just keep making muffins and doing laundry and singing off-key lullabies, she could pretend her life was actually this simple. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, a kitchen that barely fit 2 people, a living room where Arya's baby gear had taken over every surface. But it was theirs, safe, anonymous. Nobody in Crescent Bay knew about Dante. Nobody asked questions about Arya's father. Small towns had their gossip, sure, but Maya had spread the word that Elara was a widow, and that shut most people up pretty quick. Elara felt guilty about the lie. Not guilty enough to tell the truth. She pulled the muffins out of the oven and set them on the counter to cool. Arya was in her bouncer, making the aggressive happy noises that meant she'd figured out how to grab her own feet and was very pleased with herself about it. "You're so smart," Elara said, crouching down to kiss her daughter's forehead. "Too smart. You get that from your dad." Arya grinned. She had 4 teeth now. Dante's eyes, Elara's smile. A personality that was somehow both of them, stubborn as hell, but weirdly charming about it. Elara's phone buzzed. She picked it up, expecting Maya. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "Check your bank account." Her stomach dropped. She opened her banking app, stared at the balance. Someone had deposited $50,000 overnight. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She called Maya. He did it again. What did he do? "Money. In my account. 50,000. Maya swore. "That's the 3rd time this month." "I know." "Elle, you need to call him. Tell him to stop. I don't have his number anymore. So get it. Or show up at his office. Something. This is getting out of hand." Elara hung up, stared at the number on her screen. $50,000. Just sitting there. Like it was nothing. It probably was nothing to him. She transferred it to a separate savings account, the one she'd started specifically for Dante's guilt money. She didn't want to touch it, didn't want to need it, but she also wasn't stupid enough to send it back. If things went bad, if she had to run again, she'd need every penny. Arya started fussing, hungry. Alara picked her up, settled into the rocking chair by the window, and started nursing. The rain had started. She watched it streak down the glass and tried not to think about the fact that somewhere, 2,000 miles away, Dante was watching her, protecting her, funding her life like she was some kind of project he couldn't let go of. She hated it. She needed it. She hated that she needed it. "Your dad's an idiot," she told Arya softly, "but I guess we're stuck with him anyway." What Alara didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Dante's protection was the only thing keeping her alive. Because 3 weeks later, everything went to hell. It started with a man Alara didn't recognize showing up at the coffee shop where she worked part-time. He ordered a black coffee, sat in the corner booth, and watched her for 2 hours without saying a word. She noticed. Hard not to. He was tall, muscular, with a scar running down the side of his face that looked like someone had tried to split his head open and hadn't quite managed it. He wore a suit that was too nice for Crescent Bay, and he kept staring at Arya, who was in her carrier behind the counter, chewing on a plastic giraffe. When Alara's shift ended, she grabbed Arya and left through the back door. She made it halfway to her car before she realized he was following her. "Excuse me," he called. "Miss Quinn?" She froze. Nobody here knew her full name. She'd been using her middle name, Rose, since she'd moved. Alara Rose. Generic. Forgettable. She turned. "I think you have me confused with someone else." "I don't think I do." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You're Alara Quinn. Used to be Alara Varelli before the divorce. And that's Dante Varelli's daughter you're holding." Her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might pass out. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Been looking for you for months. You're good at hiding. I'll give you that." Took a step closer, but not good enough. "What do you want?" "Not here. Too many witnesses." He nodded toward the street. "Get in your car. Drive to the address I'm about to send you. Don't make a scene. Don't call anyone. And maybe this stays civil." "And if I don't?" He looked at Arya. "Then it doesn't." Alara's phone buzzed. An address on the outskirts of town. Middle of nowhere. She got in her car. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel. Arya was fussing in the back seat, picking up on her fear. Alara wanted to run, wanted to drive straight to the police station, but the man was following her in a black SUV, and she knew that he wouldn't hesitate to hurt them if she didn't do exactly what he said. The address led to an abandoned warehouse. Of course it did, because apparently her life had turned into a bad crime movie. She parked, got out, lifted Arya out of her car seat and held her close. The man was waiting by the entrance. "Inside." "Who are you?" "Name's Kostya. I work for Viktor Volkov. You know that name?" She did. Dante had mentioned him once. A Russian mob boss. The kind of man who made Dante look like a saint. "What does he want with me?" "Not you, Varelli. But you're going to help us get to him." "I don't talk to Dante anymore." "Don't lie. He's been watching you, sending money, protecting you." Kostya gestured toward the warehouse. "We've been watching too. Took us a while to figure out where he was putting his attention. But once we did," he smiled, "you led us right to his weak spot." Alara felt cold all over. "He doesn't care about me. He cares about her." Kostya nodded at Arya. "That's his kid, right? 6 months old, born in February. He didn't even know she existed until after she was born. But the moment he found out, he put protection on you. Anonymous donations, free car repairs, rent cuts, real subtle." He laughed. "Varelli thinks he's being careful, but he's not. He's sloppy. And now we've got leverage. I won't help you. You don't have a choice." He pulled out a phone, showed her a photo. Maya, walking to her car outside the grocery store. Recent. Yesterday, maybe. "Your sister's nice," Kostya said. "Be a shame if something happened to her." Alara's vision blurred. "Don't." "Then cooperate. You call Varelli. Tell him you need him. He'll come running, and when he does, we'll be waiting. He won't come. We're divorced. He doesn't. He'll come. Kostya put the phone away. You're going to call him, and you're going to make it convincing. Because if you don't, your sister dies. Then you die. Then the kid dies. In that order. Understand? Arya started crying, full-on wailing. Alara bounced her automatically, trying to soothe her, but her own hands were shaking too hard. I understand, she whispered. Good. You've got 24 hours. Make the call. Get him here, and maybe everyone walks away from this. He left, got in his SUV and drove off like he'd just finished a business meeting. Alara stood in the empty parking lot, holding her screaming daughter, and tried to remember how to breathe. She made it back to the apartment on autopilot, got Arya fed, changed, settled, called Maya. Come over, Alara said when her sister picked up. Right now, don't ask questions, just come. Maya showed up 15 minutes later. She took one look at Alara's face and said, What happened? Alara told her everything. The man at the coffee shop, the warehouse, the threats. When she was done, Maya was white as paper. We need to call the police. And tell them what? That my ex-husband's enemies found me and want to use me to kill him? They'll think I'm insane. Then call Dante. That's exactly what they want me to do. So don't call him. Run. Take Arya and disappear again. They're watching Maya. They showed me your photo. If I run, they'll hurt you. I don't care. I care. Alara's voice cracked. I'm not letting them hurt you because of me. Maya grabbed her hands. Then what are we going to do? Alara didn't have an answer. She sat on the couch, staring at nothing, while Arya slept in her crib and the clock on the wall ticked away the hours she didn't have. At midnight, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello? You okay? Dante's voice, low, rough, like he'd been awake for days. She almost dropped the phone. How did you... Luca called me. Said a man was following you. Russian, scarred face. That sound familiar? How do you know? Because I've had eyes on you since you left. Don't be mad. Just tell me what he said. Alara closed her eyes. She should have known. Of course Dante had someone watching her. Of course he'd know the second things went wrong. He wants me to call you, she said quietly. Wants me to lure you here so they can kill you. Viktor Volkov. He said that name, yeah. And he threatened you. He threatened Maya and Arya. Said if I don't cooperate, he'll... Her voice broke. Dante, I don't know what to do. You're going to get on a plane. Tonight. You, Maya, and the baby. Luca will take you to a safe house, somewhere Victor can't reach. And then what? I spend the rest of my life hiding? Just until I handle this. Handle it how? Silence. Long enough that she knew the answer. You're going to kill him, she said. I'm going to end this. There's a difference. No, there's not. Alara, this is why I left Dante, because your world doesn't have room for normal, for safe. And now it's found me anyway, and I... She stopped. Arya was stirring in the crib. I can't do this anymore. I know, that's why you're leaving, tonight. And you? I'll be fine. That's not what I asked. He was quiet for a moment, then, I'm going to do what I should have done a year ago. I'm going to make sure you never have to look over your shoulder again. By starting a war. By ending one. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream at him that this wasn't the solution, that running and hiding in violence wouldn't fix anything, but she was too tired, too scared, and deep down she knew he was right. Viktor Volkov wasn't going to stop, not unless someone made him. What about Arya? She asked softly. What about her? Do you want to meet her before you go off and maybe die? She couldn't say it out loud. No. The word hit like a slap. No? Not like this. Not with everything falling apart. When I meet her, I want it to be because you chose it, not because I'm bleeding out in a warehouse somewhere. Dante, Luca's already on his way to you. He'll get you to the airport. I've got tickets booked. 3 seats. The safe house is in Montana, middle of nowhere. Victor won't find you there. How long do I have to stay? As long as it takes. And if you don't come back? He didn't answer. Dante, I'll come back. He hung up. Alara sat there staring at her phone. She wanted to call him back. wanted to tell him she was sorry, that she loved him, that she'd never stopped loving him, even when she'd hated him, even when she'd been terrified of him, even when she'd left. But she didn't, because what would be the point? Luca showed up at 2 in the morning. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s maybe, dark hair, sharp eyes. He looked at her like he was trying to figure out if she was going to bolt. "You ready?" he asked. "No?" "Doesn't matter. We're leaving anyway." Maya already had bags packed. She'd been throwing things into suitcases since Alara told her the plan. Clothes, diapers, formula, the stuffed rabbit Arya couldn't sleep without. They moved fast. Quiet. Like they'd done this before. They hadn't. But fear made you efficient. They were in Luca's car within 10 minutes. Arya was strapped into her car seat, still asleep, oblivious to the fact that her entire life was being uprooted again. Alara sat in the back next to her, one hand on the carrier, like if she let go, her daughter might disappear. "Where's Dante now?" Alara asked as they pulled onto the highway. "Heading back to the city. He's got a meeting with Victor tomorrow." "A meeting?" "That's what he's calling it." Alara looked out the window. The sky was starting to lighten, dawn creeping in. "Is he going to die?" Luca glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You want the truth?" "Yes. Maybe. Victor's got numbers, resources. Dante's good, but he's not invincible." "Then why is he doing this?" "Because you and that baby are the only things he gives a damn about. And he's not letting Victor take you away from him, even if it kills him." Maya reached over and squeezed Alara's hand. They didn't talk after that. The safe house was exactly what it sounded like. A cabin in the woods, 40 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by trees and silence. There was a security system, a panic room, a stocked pantry. Everything they'd need to survive. It felt like a prison. "How long are we supposed to stay here?" Maya asked when Luca dropped them off. "Until Dante says otherwise." "And if he doesn't say otherwise?" Luca didn't answer. He just handed Alara a phone. "This is a secure line. Only Dante and I have the number. If anything happens, you call. Someone will come." "What if something happens to him?" "Then Marco will come. And after Marco, there's a list. You won't be alone." He left. The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. Arya woke up and started fussing, hungry and confused. Alara fed her, changed her, walked her around the small living room until she fell back asleep. "This is insane," Maya said. She was unpacking groceries in the kitchen. "We're hiding in a cabin in Montana because your mob boss ex-husband is going to war with the Russian Mafia." "I know. How is this your life?" "I ask myself that every day." Maya stopped unpacking, turned to look at her. "Do you regret it? Marrying him?" Alara thought about it. She should have said yes. Should have said marrying Dante was the worst decision she'd ever made. But she looked at Arya sleeping in the portable crib they'd set up by the couch and couldn't bring herself to lie. "No," she said quietly. "I don't regret it." "Even with all of this?" "Even with all of this." Maya shook her head. "You're either the bravest person I know or the dumbest. Probably both." They spent the next 3 days in limbo, waiting. The secure phone didn't ring. Alara checked it obsessively anyway. Every hour, every 30 minutes, every time Arya made a noise or the wind rattled the windows or a branch snapped outside. Nothing. On the 4th day, the phone finally rang. Alara grabbed it so fast she almost dropped it. "Hello? It's Marco." Her heart stopped. "Where's Dante?" "Alive. Barely. But alive." "What happened?" "The meeting went bad. Victor brought 30 guys. Dante brought 10. It was a bloodbath." "Is he okay?" "Define okay. He took 2 bullets, lost a lot of blood, but he's breathing, and Victor's not." Alara sat down hard. "He killed him." "Yeah. And about half of Victor's crew. The rest scattered. It's over, Alara. You're safe." She should have felt relieved, should have felt something other than the cold numbness spreading through her chest. "Where is he?" "Hospital. He's been asking for you." "I can't just leave." "Yeah, you can. Luca's already on his way to get you. You'll be on a plane in 3 hours." "Maya and Arya." "Bring them. Dante wants to meet his daughter. Figure now's as good a time as any." The line went dead. Alara looked at Maya. "We're going back." "What happened?" He won, and he's hurt, and he wants to meet Arya. Maya started repacking. Of course he does. Men are so dramatic. But when they got to the hospital 12 hours later, Dante didn't look dramatic. He looked half dead. He was in a private room, hooked up to machines that beeped and hissed. His face was gray. There were bandages wrapped around his chest and shoulder. Marco was standing by the door like a guard dog. "He's asleep," Marco said when he saw Ilara. "But he'll want to know you're here." Ilara walked into the room slowly. Maya stayed in the hallway with Arya, giving her space. She sat in the chair next to the bed and looked at the man who'd turned her entire life upside down. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable, human. She reached out and took his hand. His eyes opened, took a second to focus. When they did, he smiled, barely. Hey yourself. You okay? You got shot twice and you're asking if I'm okay? Occupational hazard. That's not funny. Little bit funny." She wanted to hit him, wanted to kiss him, wanted to scream. Instead, she just held his hand and tried not to cry. "Victor's dead," he said. "I heard. You're safe now, you and Arya. I made sure. By almost dying. Worth it. Dante." "Is she here?" Ilara nodded. "In the hallway. With Maya." "Can I—" He stopped, winced. Breathing was clearly hard. "Can I meet her? You sure you're up for it?" "I've been waiting 6 months. I'm up for it." Ilara went to the door, nodded at Maya. Her sister brought Arya in, still in her carrier, wide awake and looking around with those serious dark eyes. Dante stared. "This is Arya," Ilara said softly. She unbuckled the carrier, lifted her daughter out. "Arya, this is your dad." She sat on the edge of the bed, carefully. Dante's hand was shaking when he reached out to touch Arya's tiny fingers. "Hi," he whispered. His voice cracked. "Hi, baby." Arya grabbed his finger, held on tight. And Dante Varelli, ruthless Mafia boss, killer, the man who'd just walked through hell and back, started crying. Ilara didn't expect Dante to cry. He wasn't that kind of man. But there he was, tears running down his face while Arya held his finger like she'd never let go, and Ilara felt something crack open inside her chest that she'd been keeping locked down for months. "She's perfect," Dante whispered. His voice was wrecked. "She's so perfect." "Yeah, she is." Ilara adjusted Arya on her lap. The baby was staring at Dante with that intense focus newborns sometimes had, like she was trying to figure out if he was worth her time. "She has your eyes. She has your smile. She has your stubborn streak." Dante laughed. It came out wet and broken. He touched Arya's cheek with his free hand, so gentle it looked like he was afraid she'd shatter. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. You're here now. That's not enough. It's a start." Maya cleared her throat from the doorway. "I'm going to get coffee. Give you two some time." She left. The machines kept beeping. Outside the window, the city was waking up. Morning traffic, people going about their normal lives. Nobody knowing that in this room, everything was different. "I don't know how to do this," Dante said after a while. "Be a father. I don't know the first thing about kids. Neither did I. I figured it out. You're good at it. I'm exhausted and terrified 90% of the time." "Yeah, but you're doing it anyway." He looked at her, really looked. "I want to be part of this, part of her life. If you'll let me." Ilara's throat tightened. She'd spent 6 months telling herself she was better off alone, that Dante's world was too dangerous, too violent, too broken for a child to be anywhere near. But looking at him now, beaten up, crying, completely undone by a 6-month-old baby, she realized something she'd been avoiding. He wasn't just the man who'd signed divorce papers to protect her. He was also the man who'd gone to war to keep them safe. Who'd funded their life from a distance because he couldn't stand the thought of them struggling. Who'd taken 2 bullets and kept fighting because giving up meant losing them. "She needs you," Ilara said quietly. "I need you. But I need to know this is over, that Victor was the end of it. It's over. You promise?" "I promise." He winced, shifted slightly. The movement pulled at his stitches. "I'm done, Ilara. No more wars, no more enemies showing up at coffee shops. I'm going to make this right." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." Arya started fussing. hungry. Alara stood up. I should feed her. Can I? Dante stopped. Can you stay? Here, in the hospital, just for a few days until I get out. Dante, I know I don't have the right to ask, but I just got shot for you, so maybe cut me some slack. She almost smiled. That's emotional blackmail. Is it working? Unfortunately, she stayed. Maya went back to Crescent Bay to close up the apartment and pack their things. Marco arranged for a hotel room nearby. Alara spent the next 3 days shuttling between the hospital and the hotel, bringing Arya to see Dante every few hours. He healed fast. Faster than the doctors expected. By day 4, he was sitting up. By day 5, he was arguing with the nurses about when he could leave. By day 6, Marco showed up with discharge papers and a wheelchair Dante refused to use. I can walk, Dante said. You got shot in the chest, Marco pointed out. And I'm fine. You're an idiot. That's insubordination. Fire me. They bickered all the way to the car. Alara followed with Arya, trying not to laugh. It felt surreal. Normal. Like they were just a regular dysfunctional family arguing about hospital policy instead of mob violence and custody arrangements. Marco drove them to Dante's penthouse, the same one Alara had left a year ago. She stood in the lobby, holding Arya, and felt her stomach twist. I can't stay here, she said. Dante turned. Why not? Because this is where I signed the papers, where everything fell apart. So we'll make new memories. Better ones. Dante, it's the safest place I've got. Security's tight. No one gets in without clearance. And I've got space. 3 bedrooms. Arya can have her own room. Alara looked at him. He was pale, still moving carefully, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Hope, maybe. Or desperation. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. Just for a few weeks, she said finally. Until we figure out what comes next. Deal. They went up. The penthouse looked exactly the same. Leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, that ridiculous modern art piece Dante had bought because someone told him it was an investment. Alara had always hated it. I'm getting rid of that painting, Dante said, following her gaze. You don't have to. It's ugly. You always thought so. I'm getting rid of it. He called someone. By the time Arya needed her afternoon nap, the painting was gone, and there was a crib being assembled in one of the spare bedrooms. Dante tried to help. Alara made him sit down before he ripped his stitches. I'm fine, he protested. You're bleeding through your shirt. He looked down. Oh. She made him change the bandages. His chest was a mess of stitches and bruises. The bullet wounds were healing, but they'd leave scars. More scars to add to the collection he already had. Does it hurt? She asked. Not as much as watching you leave did. She froze. Dante? I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm just being honest. He gestured at his chest. This doesn't even register compared to the last year. You could have called. You would have hung up. Maybe. Definitely. He was right. She would have. Because hearing his voice would have made her want to go back, and going back would have meant dragging Arya into his world. And she couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. Except now she was here anyway. In his penthouse, sleeping in his guest room, letting him hold their daughter while she made bottles and did laundry and pretended this was sustainable. It wasn't. She knew it wasn't. But she was too tired to fight it. The first week was awkward. Dante didn't know how to change a diaper. Alara had to teach him. He held Arya like she was made of glass. Alara had to show him it was okay to be less careful. He tried to help with night feedings and ended up falling asleep in the rocking chair with the baby on his chest, while Alara took a photo she'd probably regret keeping later. The second week was easier. Dante figured out Arya's schedule, learned her cries, hungry versus tired versus bored, started doing the 3 a.m. feeding so Alara could sleep. He was surprisingly good at it, patient in a way she hadn't expected. You're a natural, she said one morning, watching him burp Arya with the efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for months instead of days. I'm faking it. Aren't we all? He smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him since before the divorce. It made him look younger, less haunted. The third week, Marco showed up with news. We've got a problem, Marco said. He was standing in the living room, looking uncomfortable. Dante was on the couch with Arya, asleep on his chest. Alara was in the kitchen making coffee. What kind of problem? Dante asked. Dante, the Nikolaev brothers, they're saying Victor's death leaves a power vacuum. They want to move into his territory. Let them. Marco blinked. What? I said let them. It's not my territory, not my problem. They're going to come after you anyway. Victor was their cousin. Then I'll deal with it when it happens. But I'm not starting another war. Dante? I'm done, Marco. I told you that. I told everyone that. You can't just walk away from this life. Watch me. Marco looked at Alara. She looked back. She didn't know what to say. Dante had been talking about getting out, about making things safe, but she hadn't actually believed he'd do it. Men like him didn't retire. They died or went to prison. Those were the only two options. You're serious, Marco said slowly. Dead serious. You're just going to let everything fall apart. I'm going to let someone else hold it together. I don't care anymore. Bullshit. You've spent 20 years building this empire and you're just going to hand it over? For her? Dante looked down at Arya. Yeah, I am. Marco left. He looked pissed. Alara brought Dante his coffee and sat next to him on the couch. You really mean that? She asked. Every word. Your people aren't going to let you just walk away. They don't get a vote. Dante, I've been thinking about this since the hospital, since I held her for the first time and realized I'd spent 6 months watching from a distance when I should have been there. I don't want to be the guy who dies in a warehouse when she's 5. I want to be the guy who teaches her to ride a bike, who scares off her first boyfriend, who walks her down the aisle someday. He looked at Alara. I want to be normal. For her. For you. Even if I have no idea how. Alara felt tears burning behind her eyes. She blinked them back. Normal's overrated. Maybe, but I'd like to try. She kissed him. She didn't plan to. It just happened. One second they were talking, the next her mouth was on his and he was kissing her back like he'd been waiting a year for permission. When they pulled apart, Arya was awake and staring at them like they'd lost their minds. Sorry, baby, Alara whispered. Your parents are a mess. Arya blew a raspberry. Dante laughed. It was the best sound Alara had heard in months. But normal didn't come easy. The Nikolaev brothers made their move 2 weeks later. They hit one of Dante's warehouses, burned it to the ground, left a message spray-painted on the wall. You're next. Dante didn't retaliate. He doubled security on the penthouse, put more men on Alara and Arya, started making calls to people he trusted, people who could take over his operations piece by piece without starting a bloodbath. This is going to take time, he told Alara one night. They were in bed, his bed, which she'd been sleeping in for the past week because pretending they were just co-parenting had gotten exhausting. I can't just walk away overnight. There are too many moving parts. How long? 6 months? Maybe a year? And if the Nikolaevs don't wait that long, then I'll handle them. By killing them. If I have to. She rolled over to face him. You said you were done. I said I was done starting wars. I didn't say I wouldn't finish one if someone forced my hand. That's not the same thing. It's the best I can do. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that violence only led to more violence, that there had to be another way. But she'd been living in his world long enough to know better. Men like the Nikolaevs didn't negotiate. They took what they wanted and destroyed anyone who got in their way. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. You don't get to be scared. You're the scary one. Not anymore. Now I'm just a guy trying not to screw up the best thing that ever happened to him. He pulled her closer. She let him. Arya was asleep in the nursery. The security system was armed. Outside, the city was alive with noise and light. Inside, for just this moment, they were safe. It didn't last. 3 days later, Alara was in the lobby with Arya, waiting for the car Marco had arranged to take them to a doctor's appointment, when a black van pulled up outside. 3 men got out. One of them had a gun. Alara saw it happen in slow motion. The men walking toward the building, the doorman reaching for his phone, the gun coming up. She ran, grabbed Arya out of her stroller and ran for the elevators. Hit the button. The doors opened. She threw herself inside and jabbed the button for the penthouse. The doors started to close. One of the men caught them, stuck his arm through. The doors bounced back open. Going somewhere? He asked. Russian accent. thick scar over one eye. Alara backed into the corner of the elevator, clutching Arya so tight the baby started crying. Please, please don't. Dante Varelli killed our brother. Now we're going to kill what he loves. He raised the gun. A shot rang out. The man dropped. Behind him, Luca was standing with his own gun drawn, breathing hard. Get out of here. Now. Alara didn't argue. She ran past the body, past the other two men who were pulling their own weapons, past the doorman who was yelling into his phone. She made it to the street, flagged down a cab, gave the driver an address she barely remembered. Maya's friend. Someone who owed her a favor. A safe place. Temporary. Just long enough to figure out what the hell to do next. The cab driver kept looking at her in the rear view mirror. You okay, lady? Fine, just drive. Arya was screaming. Alara was shaking so hard she couldn't get her phone out of her pocket. When she finally did, she called Dante. He answered on the first ring. Where are you? They came for us. At the building. Luca shot one of them, but I ran and I don't know if they're following me, and Dante, I can't do this. Breathe. Where are you right now? She looked out the window, gave him the cross streets. Okay, I'm sending Marco. He'll meet you wherever you're going. Don't get out of the cab until he's there. Understand? Okay. Alara, I'm scared. I know. I'm going to fix this, I promise. He hung up. The cab kept driving. Arya was still crying. Alara held her and rocked her and tried not to throw up. Marco was waiting when they pulled up outside the apartment building. He paid the driver, got Alara and Arya inside. The apartment belonged to someone named Christine, a woman Alara had met exactly once at one of Maya's birthday parties. She looked terrified when she opened the door and saw Marco's gun. It's okay, Alara said quickly. We just need a place to stay for a few hours. What happened? It's complicated. Christine let them in. The apartment was small but clean. She made tea that Alara didn't drink. Arya finally stopped crying and fell asleep in her arms. Marco stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, having a heated conversation with someone in Italian. Alara's phone buzzed, a text from Dante. On my way, don't move. She texted back. Where are you going? No response. 2 hours later, her phone rang again. Not Dante. Marco. Turn on the news, Marco said. What? Just turn it on. Christine had a TV. Alara found the remote, flipped to a news channel. The headline made her stomach drop. Explosion in downtown warehouse district. Multiple casualties reported. Authorities investigating possible mob connection. The footage showed a building in flames. Emergency vehicles. Body bags. That's the Nikolaev's headquarters, Marco said quietly. Or it was. Dante did this. Yeah. He promised to protect you. That's what he's doing. Alara felt cold all over. How many people died? Does it matter? Yes. Marco sighed. 7, maybe more. They're still pulling bodies out. She hung up, set the phone down, looked at Arya sleeping peacefully in her arms. This was her daughter's father. A man who'd just killed 7 people because they'd threatened his family. A man who'd promised to be normal, to walk away, to be better. A man who couldn't stop being what he was. When Dante finally showed up, it was midnight. He looked like hell. Smoke in his hair, blood on his hands. He walked into Christine's apartment and stopped when he saw Alara's face. I had to, he said. I know. They were going to keep coming. I couldn't. I know. Then why are you looking at me like that? Because you killed 7 people. They tried to kill you. I know that too. She stood up carefully so she wouldn't wake Arya. But you promised you were done. You said you wanted to be normal. And the first time someone pushes back, you blow up a building. What was I supposed to do? Ask them nicely to leave us alone? I don't know, but this... She gestured at him, at the blood, at the look in his eyes that said he'd do it again in a heartbeat. This isn't normal. This is never going to be normal. I know. His voice was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. I know, he said again. I know I can't be what you need me to be, but I'm trying. And maybe trying isn't enough. Maybe I'm always going to be the guy who solves problems with violence, but I'm also the guy who loves you, who loves her. He looked at Arya. And I'll burn down the whole damn city if that's what it takes to keep you safe. Alara felt tears on her face. I can't live like this. Then don't. Take Arya and go. I'll make sure you're protected. I'll fund your life. You'll never have to see me again. Is that what you want? No, but what I want doesn't matter. You do. She wanted to hate him, wanted it to be simple. But nothing about Dante had ever been simple. He was violent and protective and broken and trying so damn hard to be something he wasn't. And she loved him anyway. She'd loved him when she left, loved him when she was pregnant and terrified, loved him when he showed up at the hospital half dead, loved him now, covered in someone else's blood, offering to let her go if that's what it took. I don't want to leave, she said. Elara, but I need you to promise me something. No more wars, no more buildings exploding. You want out of this life? Then get out. For real. Not halfway. Not, I'll quit after this one last thing. Actually walk away. It's not that simple. Make it simple. He stared at her. Then he pulled out his phone. Made a call. Marco, I'm done. Sell everything. The warehouses, the businesses, all of it. Liquidate the assets. Give the money to charity for all I care. I want out by the end of the month. He hung up, looked at Elara. Simple enough? She kissed him. Hard. Like she was trying to prove to herself this was real. That he was real. That they had a chance at something that didn't end in blood and fire. When they pulled apart, Dante was smiling. So that's a yes? That's a maybe. You've got a month to prove you mean it. Deal. He held out his hand. She took it. And for the first time in a year, Elara let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd actually survive this. The month that followed felt like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion. Dante kept his word. He started selling everything. The warehouses went first, then the clubs, the restaurants that were definitely not just restaurants, the import businesses that imported things customs would have been very interested in. Marco handled most of it. He showed up at the penthouse every morning with papers for Dante to sign, looking more stressed each day. The Calabrese family wants to buy the shipping operation, Marco said one Tuesday morning. He was standing in the kitchen while Elara made breakfast and Dante fed Arya her bottle. They're offering $2 million. Take it, Dante said. It's worth $4 million. I don't care. Take it. Marco slammed the folder down on the counter. You're giving away 20 years of work. I'm buying a future. Dante looked at Arya. She was grabbing at his shirt with her tiny fists, milk-drunk and happy. This is worth more than any of it. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but I'll regret it while teaching my daughter to walk instead of bleeding out in some alley. Marco left. The door closed harder than necessary. Elara turned from the stove where she was burning toast because she'd never been good at cooking, and having Dante back in her life hadn't magically fixed that. He's not wrong, she said quietly. You're losing a lot of money. Money I made doing things I'm not proud of. Good riddance. And when it runs out, then I'll get a real job, something boring. Insurance sales, car dealership, I don't know. She almost laughed at the image of Dante Varelli trying to sell someone a Honda Civic. You'd be terrible at insurance sales. Probably, but at least nobody would shoot at me. The toast popped up. Burned. She scraped off the worst of it and brought him a plate anyway. He ate it without complaining. That's how she knew he was serious about this. The old Dante would have sent it back, would have had someone else make breakfast. This version ate burned toast and burped a baby and looked at her like she'd hung the moon. It was unsettling, but in a good way. 3 weeks into the liquidation, things started getting complicated. Not everyone was happy about Dante stepping back. Some of his people felt abandoned. Others saw opportunity. There were arguments, threats. One of his lieutenants disappeared for 2 days before Marco found him in Atlantic City, drunk and ranting about loyalty. This is getting messy, Elara said one night. They were in bed. Arya was finally sleeping through the night, which meant they could have actual conversations instead of just exchanging exhausted grunts. I know. Are you sure this is the right move? Are you asking because you're worried or because you're having doubts? Both. He rolled onto his side to face her. When I was in that hospital, bleeding out, all I could think about was her, about you, about how I'd spent 6 months watching from a distance instead of being there. And I thought, what's the point of all this power if I can't use it to protect the people I love? But then I realized the power is what puts them in danger in the first place. So you're just going to give it all up. I'm going to try, and maybe I'll fail. Maybe in 6 months, I'll be back in the life because I don't know how to be anything else. But I have to try. For her, for you. He touched her face. For me. She kissed him. They made love quietly, carefully, like they were still learning each other again. Afterward, she lay with her head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat and tried not to think about how many times she'd almost lost this. The 4th week, everything went to hell. It started with a phone call. Marco, his voice tight with something that sounded like panic. We've got a problem. Dante sat up. It was 3 a.m. Alara was still asleep next to him. What kind of problem? Antonio Greco. He's not selling. What do you mean he's not selling? I mean, he's refusing to liquidate his share of the operation. Says you don't get to just walk away and leave him holding the bag. Tell him he can keep it. I don't care. He doesn't want to keep it. He wants you to stay. Says if you leave, everything falls apart, and he loses everything. That's not my problem. He's making it your problem. He's got something. Something he says will bring you back in whether you want to or not. Dante felt cold. What does he have? He wouldn't say. Just told me to tell you that if you don't meet with him by tomorrow night, he's going public with it. Going public with what? I don't know. But he sounded serious. Dante hung up, sat on the edge of the bed. Alara stirred behind him. What's wrong? Her voice was sleepy, soft. Nothing. Go back to sleep. Dante, I said go back to sleep. She sat up. Don't do that. Don't shut me out. He wanted to protect her from this, but they'd tried that before and it hadn't worked. So he told her about Antonio, about the threat, about the meeting. You're not going, she said immediately. I have to. It's a trap. Maybe, but if I don't go, he'll go public with whatever he's got. And if it's what I think it is, what do you think it is? He didn't answer, but she saw it in his face. Something bad, something that could undo everything they'd been building. I'm coming with you, she said. Absolutely not. Then you're not going. Alara, I mean it. You want to walk away from this life? Then walk away. Don't go running back the second someone threatens you. If I don't go, people could get hurt. People are always going to get hurt in your world. That's the whole point. You can't save everyone. I can try. She grabbed his face, made him look at her. You promised me. No more wars, no more explosions, no more meetings in abandoned warehouses that end with you bleeding. This is different. It's never different. He pulled away, got dressed. She watched him, angry and scared and trying not to show either. When he was done, he bent down and kissed her. She didn't kiss back. I'll be home by morning, he said. You better be. Because if you're not, I'm taking Arya and leaving. For real this time. He left. The door closed. Alara sat in the dark and tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. The meeting was in a restaurant Antonio owned. High-end place in Midtown, the kind with tablecloths and wine lists thicker than phone books. It was closed when Dante arrived. Just Antonio sitting at a corner table, smoking a cigar like he owned the world. You came, Antonio said. He was a big man, late 50s, gray hair slicked back, expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the gut he'd been growing for the past decade. You didn't give me much choice. Dante sat across from him. Marco stood behind him, hand resting on his gun. What do you want? I want you to stay. Can't do that. Because of the girl. Because I'm done. Antonio laughed, took a long pull on his cigar. Nobody's ever done. You know that. This life doesn't let go. I'm making it let go. By selling everything? By walking away like the last 20 years didn't happen? Antonio leaned forward. You think the families are just going to let you retire? You know too much. You've got too many connections. You're a liability. Then they can deal with it. Or I can give them a reason to eliminate you. Antonio pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Open it. Dante opened it. Inside were photos. Him meeting with a federal agent 6 years ago. The agent was a man named Sullivan. He'd been trying to flip Dante. Dante had been playing him for information. It had been a dangerous game, but it had paid off. Sullivan ended up dead in a car accident a month later. Convenient accident. Very convenient. Where did you get these? Dante's voice was flat. I've had them for years. Insurance, in case you ever decided to screw me over. I'm not screwing you over. You're leaving me to clean up your mess. That's the same thing. Antonio tapped the photos. These get out. The families think you're a rat. You know what happens to rats. You're blackmailing me. I'm reminding you of your obligations. Marco moved. His gun was out before Antonio finished talking. Give me the word, boss. No. Dante held up a hand. He was staring at Antonio. You really think I'm going to let you threaten me? I think you're going to do what's smart. Stay in the game, keep the operation running, and these photos disappear. And if I don't? Then they go to every family on the East Coast. You'll be dead within a week, along with anyone you care about. Antonio smiled. That pretty ex-wife of yours, the baby, the sister in Oregon, everyone. Dante stood up, slowly. You just made a mistake. I don't think so. You threatened my family. That's not a negotiating tactic. That's a death sentence. Antonio's smile faded. He reached for something under the table. Marco shot him in the shoulder before he could pull it out. Antonio went down screaming. The gun clattered across the floor. Boss? Marco said. Dante picked up the folder, took the photos, walked over to where Antonio was bleeding on his expensive carpet. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me where the copies are, all of them, and then you're going to disappear. Move to Florida, retire. I don't care. But if I ever see you again, if I even hear your name, I'll finish what Marco started. There are no copies, Antonio gasped. Blood was spreading across his shirt. That's it. That's all I had. You're lying. I swear. I swear on my mother. That's everything. Dante looked at Marco. Marco shook his head. He's telling the truth, I can tell. Dante dropped the folder on Antonio's chest. Get out of my city. They left. Got in the car. Marco was driving. Dante sat in the back seat and stared at nothing. You okay? Marco asked. No. You want to tell Ilara about this? I have to. I promise no more secrets. She's not going to like it. I know. When Dante got back to the penthouse, it was almost dawn. Ilara was awake, sitting on the couch in the dark. Arya was asleep in her arms. You're alive, Ilara said. No emotion, just fact. Yeah. Did you kill anyone? No, Marco shot Antonio in the shoulder. He'll live. Why did Marco shoot him? Dante told her everything. The photos, the blackmail, the threats. When he was done, she was quiet for a long time. So it's not over, she said finally. It's over. Antonio's leaving. The photos are gone. Nobody else knows. Until the next Antonio, the next threat, the next person who decides you know too much or owe too much or are too dangerous to let go. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. She was right. He didn't. But he couldn't tell her that. Couldn't admit that walking away might be impossible. That the life might not let him go no matter how hard he tried. I'm sorry, he said. I know you are. But sorry doesn't keep us safe. She stood up, carried Arya to the nursery. Dante followed. Watched her put the baby in the crib, adjust the blanket, turn on the nightlight. All the small rituals that made up being a parent. I meant what I said earlier, Ilara told him without turning around. If this happens again, I'm gone. I can't keep doing this. Waiting up, wondering if you're coming home, wondering if today's the day someone shows up with a gun. I can't raise Arya like this. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're trying to have it both ways. You want out, but you won't actually leave. You keep getting pulled back in. I'm trying. Try harder. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were wet. Because I can't lose you again. I can't watch you die. And I can't let Arya grow up thinking this is normal. It won't be. I promise. You've promised before. She walked past him, went to bed, closed the door. Not quite slamming it, but close enough. Dante stood in the hallway and felt everything he'd been trying to build crumbling around him. He'd thought it would be simple. Sell everything, walk away, start over. But nothing was ever simple. Not in his world. Maybe not in any world. He went to his office, pulled out a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving, poured a glass, then another. By the time the sun came up, the bottle was half empty and he still didn't have answers. Marco found him there at 8 in the morning. You look like hell. Thanks. We need to talk. If this is about Antonio, it's not. It's about Alara. Marco sat down. She's right, you know. You can't keep doing this. Half in, half out. It's going to destroy you, destroy all of you. I don't know how to stop. Yes, you do. You just don't want to. That's not fair. It's true. You're scared. Scared of being nobody. Scared of not mattering. You've spent 20 years being the guy everyone fears. Being powerful. Important. And now you're supposed to be what? A regular father? A regular husband? That terrifies you more than any bullet ever could. Dante wanted to argue. Wanted to say Marco was wrong. But he couldn't. Because deep down, he knew it was true. He'd built his entire identity around being dangerous, being in control, being the man with all the answers. And now he was supposed to be the man who changed diapers and made bottles and worried about preschool enrollment? He didn't know how to be that person. I don't want to lose them, Dante said quietly. Then figure it out, fast, because Alara's not bluffing. She will leave, and she won't come back. Marco left. Dante sat alone in his office and thought about all the ways he'd failed. Failed Alara by making her feel unsafe. Failed Arya by not being the father she deserved. Failed himself by not being strong enough to walk away. The next 3 days were tense. Alara was polite, distant. She took care of Arya, made meals, slept in the guest room. Dante tried to talk to her. She wasn't ready. On the 4th day, Luca showed up with more news. There's been chatter, Luca said. He looked nervous. People asking questions about you, about Alara, about the baby. What kind of people? Feds. They're putting together a task force, looking into Victor's death, the Nikolaev explosion, all of it. And your name keeps coming up. Dante felt ice in his chest. How solid is it? Solid enough. They're building a case, could be indictments in 6 months, maybe less. For what? Murder, racketeering, the usual. But they've got witnesses this time, people flipping, Antonio's talking. Antonio's in the hospital. And he's cooperating, giving them everything, names, dates, operations. He's buying himself immunity by selling you out. Dante stood up, started pacing. This was bad. Worse than bad. If the feds were coming, if they had real evidence, no amount of money or connections would save him. He'd go to prison, die there probably, and Alara and Arya would be left alone, unprotected. How long do I have? He asked. A month, maybe 2. Then they'll move. Can we stop it? Not without making things worse. Dante stopped pacing, looked at Luca. What if I cooperate? What? What if I give them what they want? Testify. Turn state's evidence. All of it. Luca stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You'd be a rat. I'd be alive. You'd be dead. Everyone in the life would want you gone. Everyone in the life already wants me gone. This way, at least, I'd have federal protection. Witness protection. A new life. Clean slate. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. He called Alara into the office, told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When he was done, she sat back in her chair. Witness protection, she said slowly. That means new names, new identities. We'd have to disappear. Yes. Forever. Yes. No contact with Maya. No going back to Crescent Bay. No old life at all. That's the deal. She looked at him. And you're okay with that? I don't have a choice. If I don't flip, I go to prison. If I go to prison, you and Arya are targets. Everyone I've ever pissed off will come after you. This is the only way. The only way is running, again. Better than being dead. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city. I spent 6 months running from you, built a whole life trying to stay hidden, and now we're going to spend the rest of our lives doing the same thing, just with federal help this time. I know it's not ideal. It's not even close to ideal. But you're right. We don't have a choice. She turned back to him. Make the deal. Do whatever you have to do. But this is it, Dante. Last chance. If this doesn't work, if we end up running again because you couldn't let go, I'm done. Completely done. Understood. He called his lawyer, set up a meeting with the feds. It took 3 days to hammer out the details. Dante would testify against everyone he'd ever worked with. give up names, locations, operations. In exchange, he'd get immunity and a new identity for himself and his family. The day before he was supposed to sign the deal, someone tried to kill him. He was in the car with Marco, heading back from the lawyer's office, when another car ran them off the road. They crashed into a guardrail. Marco got out shooting. There were 3 men, professional, well-trained. They weren't there to send a message. They were there to finish the job. Dante grabbed his own gun, returned fire, caught one in the chest. Marco got another. The third ran. They didn't chase him. "You okay?" Marco asked. His arm was bleeding. "Yeah, you?" "I've had worse." They got back to the penthouse. Alara took one look at them and went white. "What happened?" "Someone found out about the deal," Dante said. "So they tried to stop it." "Did they?" "No, but they'll try again." She picked up Arya, held her close. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow. The feds are moving up the timeline. We sign in the morning. They put us in a safe house until trial. Then we disappear." "Okay." "Okay? What else am I supposed to say? This is happening whether I like it or not." She wasn't wrong. That night they packed. Not much, just essentials. Everything else would be replaced. New clothes, new furniture, new everything. A new life purchased with the ashes of the old one. Dante sat on the edge of the bed and watched Alara pack Arya's things. The stuffed rabbit, the blanket, the tiny shoes she'd just started wearing, all of it going into a bag, all of it leaving behind a life they'd barely gotten to live. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know. I wish it didn't have to be like this." "Me too." She zipped up the bag, sat next to him. They stayed there for a long time, not talking, just existing in the space between what was and what would be. In the morning, they left. Federal agents picked them up. 3 cars, full security detail. They drove to an unmarked building downtown. Dante signed papers, gave his statement, handed over files and recordings and everything he had. The prosecutor looked pleased. Dante felt empty. When it was done, an agent approached him. "We'll be moving you tonight. Location's classified. You'll stay there until trial. After that, we'll relocate you permanently." "Where?" "Can't say yet. Somewhere quiet, safe. Normal." Normal, that word again. Dante didn't think he even knew what it meant anymore. They went to the safe house. It was a brownstone in Brooklyn, nondescript, heavily guarded. Inside, it looked like a furnished apartment someone had tried to make homey and failed. Generic art on the walls. Beige furniture. It smelled like air freshener and secrets. Arya cried when they put her down in the unfamiliar crib. Alara rocked her, sang to her, eventually got her to sleep. When she came out of the bedroom, Dante was standing at the window. "Can't see much," he said. The windows were tinted, reinforced glass. Probably for the best. He turned to look at her. "Are we going to be okay?" "I don't know. Ask me in a year." "That's not comforting. It's honest." She went to bed. Dante stayed up, watched the street, tried not to think about all the people who wanted him dead, all the ways this could still fall apart, all the reasons this safe house might not be safe enough. He was still standing there when the sun came up. The trial took 3 months. 3 months of Dante sitting in a courtroom telling stories about people he'd once called family. 3 months of watching faces in the gallery, some angry, some betrayed, all of them filing away every word for later use. 3 months of coming back to the safe house and trying to be a father to a daughter who was learning to walk while her world was falling apart. Alara stopped watching the news after the first week. The headlines were brutal. Mob boss turns rat. Varelli betrays everyone. The coverage showed old photos of Dante, younger, harder, standing next to men who were now sitting in cells because of his testimony. She'd lie in bed at night and wonder if she'd made the right choice, if witness protection and federal immunity were worth the cost of his soul. She didn't ask him. She wasn't sure she wanted the answer. Arya took her first steps on a Tuesday afternoon while Dante was in court. Alara called him right after, knowing he couldn't answer but needing to tell someone anyway. When he got home that evening, she showed him the video she'd taken on her phone. Arya wobbling across the living room, arms out for balance, that look of shocked determination on her face that meant she was both terrified and thrilled. "I missed it," Dante said. His voice was flat. "There'll be others. Not the first one." He went into the bedroom, Close the door. Alara heard him in there, not crying, but something close to it. She wanted to go to him, wanted to tell him it was okay, that missing one milestone wasn't the end of the world. But she knew it wasn't about the steps. It was about everything, the trial, the testimony, the life they'd had that was gone, the life they were supposed to have that kept slipping further away. She stayed in the living room with Arya and tried to pretend things were fine. The prosecution's case was solid. They had recordings, documents, witnesses who backed up everything Dante said. The defense tried to paint him as a liar, a man who'd betray anyone to save himself. They weren't wrong. But they also couldn't disprove the evidence. By the third month, it was clear which way things were going. Marco was convicted first, 25 years. He looked at Dante across the courtroom when the verdict came down. Didn't say anything, didn't have to. The look said it all. 7 others went down after that, including Antonio, who tried to blackmail his way out but ended up with 30 years instead. When that verdict came back, Dante felt nothing. No satisfaction. No guilt. Just the hollow understanding that he'd burned down everything he'd ever built, and the ashes were all that remained. On the last day of testimony, the prosecutor asked Dante one final question. "Do you regret your actions, Mr. Varelli? The crimes you committed?" Dante looked at the jury, at the judge, at the gallery full of people who'd once respected him and now wanted him dead. Then he looked at Alara, sitting in the back row with Arya on her lap. "Yes," he said. "I regret all of it. Except her and the baby. That's the only thing I got right." The courtroom was silent. The prosecutor nodded. No further questions. They relocated 2 weeks later. The feds gave them 3 options. Small town in Montana, suburb outside Portland, a place in New Mexico that the agent described as very remote. Alara chose Portland. She wanted trees, normal streets, a place where Arya could have a backyard. Dante didn't argue. He'd stopped having opinions about anything that didn't involve immediate survival. Their new identities came in a manila envelope. David Miller, Ellen Miller, Ava Miller, basic names. Forgettable. They came with social security numbers, birth certificates, a complete history that existed only on paper. David Miller was an insurance adjuster. Ellen Miller was a former teacher. They'd met in college, gotten married young, had a baby right after. "Do we have to memorize this?" Alara asked, flipping through the documents. "Every word," the agent said. "If anyone asks, this is your life now. The old one doesn't exist." "What about Maya?" "Your sister can't know where you are. No contact, ever. It's for her safety as much as yours." Alara's hands tightened on the papers. "I can't just disappear from her life." "You already did. 6 months ago when you went into protection. This just makes it permanent." She wanted to argue, wanted to say this wasn't fair, that Maya deserved to know she was okay, but fair had stopped mattering a long time ago. They moved on a Wednesday, early morning. The agents drove them across the country in an unmarked van with tinted windows. Arya cried most of the way. Alara sang to her. Dante stared out the window and watched America scroll past like a movie he wasn't really part of. The house was in a suburb called Hillsdale. Split level, beige siding, a yard that needed mowing. It looked like every other house on the street. That was the point. "You'll have neighbors," the agent told them. "Bill and Sandra next door, retired couple, very friendly. There's a park 2 blocks down, good schools in the area. You'll fit right in." Fit right in. Like they were normal people. Like David and Ellen Miller had always existed, and Dante and Alara Varelli were just characters in a story someone had made up. The agents left. The door closed. They stood in the empty living room with their few bags and looked at each other. "This is it," Alara said. "Yeah." "You okay?" "No. You?" "No." Arya started fussing, hungry. Alara picked her up, went to find the kitchen, started unpacking the formula and bottles they'd brought. Dante stood in the middle of the room and felt the weight of his new life settle over him like a shroud. The first week was the hardest. Everything was wrong. The bed was too soft. The neighborhood too quiet. The people too normal. Bill from next door came over with a casserole and a smile and questions about where they'd moved from. Dante said Ohio. Ellen's job transferred. Bill nodded like this made perfect sense and invited them to a barbecue on Saturday. "We can't go," Dante said after Bill left. "Why not?" "Because we need to keep a low profile. David, we can't hide in the house forever. That's more suspicious than going to a barbecue. He hated that she was right, hated that she was already better at this than he was. Ellen Miller came naturally to her. She smiled at the neighbors, made small talk at the grocery store, played with Arya at the park like she hadn't spent the last year running from Russian mobsters. David Miller didn't come naturally to him at all. He didn't know how to be an insurance adjuster, didn't know how to care about property damage and liability coverage and deductibles. He went to the job the feds had arranged for him, a small office downtown, 3 other adjusters, a boss who talked too much about golf, and felt like an imposter wearing someone else's skin. "How was work?" Ilara asked his first night. "Fine." "Just fine? What do you want me to say? That I loved filling out paperwork and discussing water damage? It was terrible, all of it. It's a job. It's safe. That's what matters." "Is it? Because I feel like I'm dying inside." She didn't respond, just cleared the dishes, put Arya to bed. When she came back out, Dante was on the couch, staring at nothing. "This is going to take time," she said quietly. "You spent 20 years being one person. You can't just become someone else overnight. What if I can't become someone else at all? Then we figure it out, together." But together was getting harder. Dante was angry all the time, at the job, at the house, at the neighbors with their casseroles and their questions, at himself for not being able to let go of who he'd been. Ilara tried to be patient, tried to understand, but she was exhausted, taking care of Arya alone most of the time because Dante couldn't seem to connect. He'd hold the baby and look lost. He'd try to play with her and not know how. It was like watching someone learn to be human. 2 months in, things came to a head. They were at the park. Arya was in the sandbox eating dirt despite Ilara's best efforts. Another mom was there with her kid. She introduced herself as Jennifer, asked how old Ava was, where they'd moved from, normal questions, easy questions. Dante answered wrong, said they were from Nevada. They'd agreed on Ohio. Jennifer didn't notice. Ilara did. She corrected him smoothly, laughed it off. But when they got home, she was furious. "Nevada? We said Ohio. I forgot." "You can't forget. That's the whole point of the cover story." "I know." "Do you?" "Because you almost blew it. It was one mistake." One mistake is all it takes. Someone could have heard, could have started asking questions, and then what? Then nothing. Nobody cares about an insurance adjuster from Ohio. People care about mob bosses who turn state's evidence. People care about men with prices on their heads. You think we're safe here? We're only safe if nobody knows who we are. She was right. He knew she was right. But admitting it meant admitting he was failing at this new life, just like he'd failed at the old one. "I'm trying," he said. "Try harder." She walked away. Put Arya down for a nap. When she came back out, Dante was still standing in the living room, looking like he'd been punched. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "I don't know how to be David Miller. I don't know how to care about insurance claims and neighborhood barbecues and soccer practice. That's not me. It has to be you. Because Dante Varelli is dead. You killed him when you testified, and now you have to figure out who you are without him. What if there's nothing left? Then we build something new." She said it like it was simple, like you could just decide to be a different person and make it happen through force of will. Maybe she could. Maybe Ellen Miller was who Ilara had always wanted to be, and this was just permission to become her. But Dante didn't have that. He'd been the same person for so long, the dangerous one, the powerful one, the one people feared, that he didn't know how to be anything else. And now he was supposed to be boring, supposed to care about mortgage rates and lawn care and whether the Millers would come to the block party. He couldn't do it, didn't want to do it, but he didn't have a choice. 3 months became 6. 6 became 9. Slowly, painfully, David Miller started to take shape. Dante learned the cover story inside and out, memorized every detail until he could recite it in his sleep. He got better at the job. Not good, but better. Learned to care about property damage because caring about nothing would get him fired, and being unemployed meant questions he couldn't answer. He learned to smile at the neighbors, to make small talk about the weather and the local sports team he knew nothing about, to be so aggressively normal that people stopped noticing him at all. Ilara watched him transform. It wasn't easy. Some days he'd come home and she could see Dante underneath David, fighting to get out. But most days he held it together. For her. for Arya, for the life they were trying to build. Arya turned one. They had a small party. Just them. No neighbors, no friends. Ellen made a cake that came out lopsided. Ava smashed her face into it and laughed. David took photos on the phone the feds had given them. When it was over and Ava was asleep, they sat on the couch together. "We made it a year," Alara said. "Yeah, that's something." "Is it enough?" She leaned against him. "It has to be." But that night, lying in bed, Dante stared at the ceiling and wondered if it would ever feel like enough. If he'd ever stop feeling like he was wearing someone else's life. If the anger would ever fade, or if it would just hollow him out until there was nothing left. He didn't have answers, just questions that kept him awake while the rest of the world slept. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Ordinary day. Dante was at work. There was a new client, insurance claim for a house fire. Standard stuff. Dante was processing the paperwork when he looked up and saw the client's face. He knew him, Tommy Corso, low-level guy from one of the families, not important enough to be at the trial, but definitely someone who'd know Dante Varelli on sight. Dante's heart stopped. He looked down fast, kept his head low. Prayed Tommy wouldn't recognize him. David Miller wore glasses now, different hair, 20 pounds heavier from the stress eating, but underneath he was still the same. "Mr. Miller?" Tommy said. Dante looked up, kept his face neutral. "Yes?" "You look familiar. We met somewhere before?" "I don't think so." "You sure? You look really familiar." "I've got one of those faces." Tommy stared at him. Dante could see him trying to place it, trying to remember where he'd seen this face before. The seconds stretched. Dante's hand moved slowly toward the desk drawer where he kept nothing, because David Miller didn't keep weapons, but his body remembered anyway. Finally, Tommy shrugged. "Guess not. Anyway, about the fire. They finished the claim." Tommy left. Dante sat at his desk and tried not to throw up. His hands were shaking. He made it through the rest of the day on autopilot. Drove home, walked in the door. Alara took one look at his face and knew. "What happened?" He told her. Everything, Tommy Corso, the near miss, how close it had come to falling apart. "Did he recognize you?" "I don't think so, but he could have. He could figure it out later, tell someone, and then we run again. I can't keep running. I can't keep being someone I'm not. I can't." He stopped, put his face in his hands. "I can't do this anymore." Alara was quiet for a long time, then, "Do you want to go back?" "What?" "To your old life. Do you want to go back?" "I can't go back. There's nothing to go back to. Everyone's in prison or dead. The empire's gone. Dante Varelli doesn't exist anymore." "So what do you want?" He looked at her, at Arya playing with blocks on the floor, at the house that wasn't his and the life that didn't fit, and the future that felt like a cage. "I want to be free," he said. "I want to wake up and not be scared. I want to be a father without looking over my shoulder. I want us to be happy, really happy, not just surviving. We can have that. But you have to let go, really let go, not halfway, not pretending. You have to bury Dante Varelli and mean it." "I don't know if I can." "You have to try. For her. For us. For yourself." She was right. He knew she was right. But knowing and doing were different things. That night, he made a decision. He went into the garage, found a box in the back, the one thing from his old life he'd kept. Photos. Not many, just a few. Him and Marco. Him and the crew. The penthouse. The restaurants. Evidence of a life that was gone. He brought it inside, put it in the fireplace. Alara watched from the doorway. "You sure?" she asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He lit the match. Watched the photos catch. Watched the faces curl and blacken and turn to ash. Marco, Antonio, Victor, all of them burning, all of them gone. When it was done, he stood up, brushed off his hands, looked at Alara. "David Miller is boring," he said. "He's got a boring job and a boring house and a boring life. But he's here. He's alive. And he gets to wake up next to you every morning. That's not nothing." "No," she agreed. "It's not." They went to bed. For the first time in months, Dante slept through the night. Time moved differently after that. Slower. Quieter. Dante stopped fighting David Miller and started becoming him. It wasn't sudden, wasn't dramatic, just a gradual shift. He started caring about the insurance claims. Not a lot, but enough. Started actually talking to Bill next door instead of just nodding. Started playing with Arya without that lost look on his face. Alara noticed. She didn't say anything, didn't want to jinx it, just watched him slowly come back to life. A different life. But a life. Arya turned 2, then 3. She started preschool. David and Ellen went to parent-teacher conferences, joined the PTA, went to birthday parties where they drank juice boxes and made small talk with other parents who had no idea who they really were. And slowly, against all odds, it worked. They stopped being Dante and Alara pretending to be David and Ellen. They just became David and Ellen. The past faded. Not gone, never gone, but distant enough that it stopped hurting all the time. 5 years after the trial, they were having dinner when Arya asked a question. "Mommy, how did you and Daddy meet?" Ellen looked at David. David looked back. They'd prepared for this. Had a story ready. Met in college, philosophy class. Very boring. But looking at his daughter, his beautiful, smart, completely unaware daughter, David felt something shift. "We met when things were complicated," he said carefully. "I wasn't a good person. Your mom helped me become better." "Are you a good person now?" "I'm trying to be." "That's what matters," Ellen said. She reached across the table, took his hand. Trying. Arya seemed satisfied with that. Went back to her mac and cheese. David and Ellen looked at each other. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or acceptance. Or just the quiet knowledge that they'd made it. Against every odd. Against every reason it shouldn't have worked. They'd made it. 7 years after the trial, Ellen got a call. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Elle?" Maya's voice, shaking. "Elle, is that you?" Ellen's heart stopped. "You can't call this number." I know, but I had to. I've been looking for you for years, and I finally found someone who knew someone who... It doesn't matter. I just needed to hear your voice." "Maya, I'm not going to tell anyone, I promise. I just needed to know you were okay. That Arya was okay." Ellen was crying. "We're okay, we're good. You're happy?" "Yeah, we are." "Then that's all I needed to know." Maya's voice cracked. "I love you. Tell Arya I love her too, even if she doesn't remember me." "She will. I'll make sure she does. Be safe, Elle." "You too." The line went dead. Ellen stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, tears running down her face. David came in, saw her crying, didn't need to ask. She called. "Yeah." "You okay?" "No, but I will be." He pulled her close, held her while she cried. For her sister. For the life they'd left behind. For all the pieces of themselves they'd had to cut away to survive. When she was done, she pulled back, wiped her eyes. "I want to tell Arya the truth someday, when she's older. I want her to know who we really were. That's dangerous. I know, but she deserves to know. Deserves to understand why we are the way we are." David thought about it, about the stories they'd tell, about whether their daughter would understand or just be scared, about whether the truth was worth the risk. "Someday," he agreed, "when she's ready." 10 years after the trial, Ava came home from middle school with a project, family history. She needed to interview her parents about where they came from, what their lives were like before. Ellen and David looked at each other across the dinner table. "We should tell her," Ellen said quietly. "She's 12. She's old enough. To know her father was a killer, that her mother married into the mob, to know we survived, that we chose her, that we gave up everything to keep her safe." David was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at his daughter, his smart, curious, completely innocent daughter who had no idea how much blood had been spilled to give her this normal life. "Okay," he said, "but not all of it. Not yet." They told her a version of the truth, that their real names were Dante and Alara, that they'd lived a different life before, a dangerous life, that they'd had to leave everything behind to protect their family. Ava listened, eyes wide. "Like witness protection." Exactly like that. Were you in the Mafia? David hesitated. Something like that. That's so cool. No, Ellen said firmly. It's not cool. It's scary. We lost everything. Friends, family, ourselves. We had to become different people just to survive. But you did survive, Ava said. And you have me. That's pretty cool. Ellen laughed. It came out wet. Yeah, we have you. That's the best part. They didn't tell her the worst parts. Not yet. Didn't tell her about Victor or the Nikolaevs or the trial. Didn't tell her about the bodies or the blood or the nights her father woke up screaming. That could wait. For now, this was enough. 15 years after the trial, David got a letter, no return address. Just his name, his real name, on the front. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sentence. I know where you are. He showed it to Ellen. She went pale. Who sent this? I don't know. What do we do? He looked at the letter, at the threat, at the life they'd built that was suddenly fragile again. Then he tore it up. Nothing, he said. We do nothing. David, I'm not running anymore. I'm not letting some asshole with a grudge destroy what we've built. If they want me, they can come. But I'm not leaving. You could die. I could, or I could live. I choose to live. No one came. Days passed, then weeks, then months. The letter had been a ghost, a reminder that the past was always there, always watching, but it didn't have to control them anymore. 20 years after the trial, David and Ellen were sitting on their porch watching Ava drive away. College. First day. She was nervous and excited and completely unaware that her parents were falling apart. She's leaving, Ellen said. Her voice was shaking. That's what kids do. I'm not ready. Neither am I. They sat in silence. The neighborhood was quiet. The sun was setting. Somewhere in the distance, someone was mowing their lawn. It was the most normal moment of David's life. We did it, he said quietly. We kept her safe, gave her a normal life. She's going to college. She's happy. Yeah, we did it. Was it worth it? Everything we gave up? Ellen looked at him. Really looked. At the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the way 20 years of boring, normal, safe life had changed him from a man who could kill without hesitation into a man who cried at their daughter's graduation. Yes, she said. It was worth it. He took her hand, held it. They sat there as the sun went down and the streetlights came on, and their daughter drove toward a future they'd fought so hard to give her. And David Miller, who had once been Dante Varelli, who had once ruled an empire and lost everything, who had killed and betrayed and burned his world to the ground, felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Peace, not happiness. Not exactly. But the quiet understanding that he'd made the right choice. That love, messy, complicated, terrifying love, was worth more than power ever had been. That his daughter's safety was worth every sacrifice. That this boring, normal, unremarkable life was the greatest thing he'd ever built. Ellen leaned her head on his shoulder. What are you thinking? That I'd do it all again, every mistake, every failure, everything, if it meant ending up here? With me? With you? With her? With this? Even the insurance job? Even the insurance job? She laughed. He smiled. And for the first time since he'd signed those divorce papers 21 years ago, Dante Varelli was actually genuinely free. Because freedom wasn't about power or control or being feared. It was about choosing who you loved over everything else. It was about waking up next to the woman who'd saved you and knowing you'd spend the rest of your life trying to deserve her. It was about watching your daughter drive away to build her own life because you'd given her the safety to do it. It was about being David Miller, boring insurance adjuster, and being completely okay with that. They went inside, made dinner, did the dishes, went to bed early because they were getting old and staying up late wasn't worth it anymore. And in the morning, David would go to work and Ellen would go to her book club, and they'd be normal and boring and alive. And that, after everything, was enough.